60. And no, he's not gone crazy. He's just Bob Pollock. And he is on the line with us here this morning. Brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
It's good to have you with us here today. Somebody asked me a question that I needed to ask you, and I can't remember what it was. So I'll have to.
You didn't write it down.
I did not. I'll have to.
Or record it on your phone or something.
Plumb the depths of my mind. If you'd like to talk to Bob this morning, 349-WCCS, 349-9227. You can call that number with your question for Mr. Pollock. We're in the month of May now, Bob, and people really itching to start that garden. It's kind of wet right now, isn't it?
It is kind of wet. If you had everything prepared from a few weeks ago when things were pretty dry, you might be good to go, and you can pop some plants in the ground without doing much disturbance. You might have to mud them in a little bit, but you might still be able to get some things planted, although we're still, when you look at the head tonight and the next couple of nights, even into next week,
you don't want to be sticking
down
near
freezing temperatures again. So we'll have to, and it's safe to put, especially some of the cooler season crops. Those are, more adaptable to colder soils and colder temperatures. So some of those things can go out, of course, like onions. And you may have peas out, would be another example.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into some of the cold crops, the cabbages and broccoli and cauliflower and those things.
Yeah.
And now as we get into May, we're starting to push the window on that a little bit because they do better when the weather is cooler, especially the air temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get those in too late, then, of course, the weather patterns change and it gets too warm. And so some of those things, especially like broccoli, they will bolt because they get into a warm spell. And instead of...
Now explain that. They will bolt. What does that mean?
Well, that means they will go into flower.
Uh-huh.
They'll send up a flower stalk, and then at that point, you can't really harvest it to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it changes. It signals the plant that, wow, temperatures are going to get out of the range where I will grow well, and so it wants to flower and make seed to perpetuate itself, and then that messes up the whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're eating, that head of broccoli, that will, when it gets too mature, you'll start to see yellow in there, and it'll start to flower, little tiny flowers in there. So you're actually eating the immature flowers from that head.
It's too late.
Yep, so it's too late when it gets to that point.
Okay, you used a term a couple of minutes ago that we need to circle back to here. To use the words of a popular press secretary. We need to circle back to this, Bob, and talk about mudding. When you're planting your garden, it's wet, and you get out there and you're mudding it in. How much damage are you doing by walking on that soil and compressing it?
Yeah, depending on how much you're walking in there, if you're just making a few steps or if you can work from the outside of the garden, maybe on where you still have sod, or if maybe you've put down some straw mulch, or even you can, if you have boards that you can put down between rows.
That's what I do.
Just so that you can gain access and do the least amount of damage possible. And, of course, and I think where that came from is, when the soil is wet, especially our soils, which mostly have a lot of clay in them, you try to plant a plant and it just gums up and it just sticks all over your hands and fingers in the plant, and you don't always get the plant, especially if you're doing transplants. It's pretty hard to seed in mud.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit easier to do transplants, but it still can be hard to get the soil nicely around without making some air pockets in the ground when the ground's too wet, because it just clumps up and compacts
and it's less likely to grow the way that you want it to if you're packing it in that kind of soil, isn't it?
Yeah, and you have to be pretty careful. You just kind of want to make a hole, get the plant in there, just eat gently, just make sure there's soil around that soil ball of the plant, and then just kind of leave it alone. It's in the ground's moist, and as long as there's no big air pockets there, it's going to be okay. And then when conditions get better, you can come back and touch it up if you need to.
Yeah.
Just make sure that the soil's firm, not compacted, but just firm around the plant, and you can fix it up then. But, sometimes, and that's what we get into, we never have perfect conditions. We might have for little periods of time, but here we are where we should be planting a lot of things at this point, and we're waiting, and then, and you do it too early, then we run into the cold issues, and we do it too late, then we're pushing seasons, and then we're trying to cram everything in, and it just, those plants will not do as well, yield as well as they would have had they been in the ground at the right time and had the right growing conditions for that.
Uh-oh, we lost him. Okay, tell you what, let's do. Let's get Bob back. I'll do this, and then we'll get Bob back on the line.
This is Paige Friedland with Allied Milk Producers. Next time you want a satisfying, icy cold drink, reach for the natural, the bestseller, the original, whole milk. That's right, whole milk gives you more.
We're on the line here this morning, so let's punch them both up here. There's Bob. There's our caller. Let's put the two of you together. Good morning.
Hi, Bob.
Good morning.
Are you there? Good morning.
Yes, I'm here.
I just have a question about removing straw when you've planted grass seed. How do you do that so you don't disturb the new grass, or do you not have to remove it?
Good question.
Yeah. So we can do that either way, depending on how much you put on there originally. If it was just enough to kind of shade and cover the ground, that the plants are coming up through it, you can actually just leave it there, and over time it will rot and decay. It actually makes kind of a netting in there, which helps hold the soil a little bit too. So if we get some heavy rains or things while those grass seedlings are still pretty fragile, that it will allow that to come up through and also hold the soil in place. And you probably can still leave a little bit there, but maybe if you got too much, you really packed it on, that you can barely see the seedlings coming up through, then just kind of either take a fork or a metal-tined rake would work, or a leaf rake, and just kind of lightly go over that and kind of take the layers off until you get down to where you can see the seedlings coming up through, and you might be able to see some soil. And then you can leave the rest of it there because the plants will grow up around it.
Okay. It is a light straw, so I think I'm just going to leave it.
There you go.
Yes. Sometimes the birds will come and help remove it.
Yeah, they've been visiting the areas, yep.
Mm-hmm. They're going to build a mansion out of that straw.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's happening right now is birds are making nests, and sometimes they'll make those where you don't want them, and it's amazing what they pick up to make those with, and try to get under your porch or, on a porch post or a windowsill.
Or in a flower pot.
Yeah. Well, see, that way they don't have to plant their own garden. They've already got one planted for them.
That's right.
Do you have one of those?
Yeah, I do. I have it in, they're building right now in a Boston fern.
Beautiful. Hey, thanks for calling.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Welcome.
Have a great day. Bye.
That's a cool story, isn't it?
Yes.
I like
that.
There
was just, Mr. Neeler had one in a car somebody brought in to get repaired.
There was a bird's nest in it?
Yeah. When the mechanic was taking it apart to Paul Neeler, there was a picture in the newspaper where the bird was building a nest. I guess the vehicle had been sitting for a while, and hey, it was fair game.
There you go. You move in where there's an apartment available, even if it's not one that you had thought of. All right,
That's
Mr. Bob Pollock, sir, thank you so much for dealing with the interruption and with our caller and with me.
Glad to do it.
Have a great weekend.
All right, you too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. FM and AM